This is Express Leads. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Express Leads. I'm your host, Paul Brady, and today I have with me Sheryl White, who runs a business called Baby Kneads. And Baby Kneads is a business that works on baby sign, baby massage, mindfulness to parents, teachers, and caregivers to foster early bonding and communication. Welcome, Sheryl.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. My pleasure. Your business sounds fascinating. Can you tell us a little bit more about it?
Yes, I started teaching infant massage in 1998 after my own experience using massage with my daughter Rachel. Rachel was a very colicky baby, and I didn't know what to do. And we had probably, I don't know, 8 hours in the evening of fussiness, and it was really difficult. And I learned baby massage, and it changed my life. And I decided to get certified in it and help others and become part of my mission to help others. And I started with those classes in 1998. And then I decided to start using sign language with Rachel because I wanted the second half of her babyhood to be better than the first half. And I wanted early communication. I wanted to know if she was hungry, if she wanted more of something, if she was hurt. And I wanted to give her a means for expression and reduce frustration. So I learned sign language for babies and took Joseph Garcia's program, Sign with Your Baby, and added that to my business. And that's why it's called Baby Kneads, kneading dough, like massage, because I started with massage. Then I added sign language, and I added sign language in 1999. And then about 10 years ago, I added mindfulness for all ages, but zeroing in on ages 3 through 6 in that preschool age. And so I added those in because I was teaching some classes in Boston, and somebody asked if I would teach some meditation for families. And I thought, well, I'd like to do mindfulness and zero in on the early years before they go to school and
Sure.
kindergarten and they have to sit still and all of that. And I wanted to teach it with families, not just teach it directly to children school age. And so that's how this all kind of started.
So can you dig in a little bit more on mindfulness, because I want our listeners to understand when you talk about mindfulness with parents. Can you just kind of describe that for us? What does that mean to you? What does it mean to a parent that works with you?
Uh, Mindfulness is something that I help families bring into their home, and it is something that they can do with their children. And they're just simple activities, a minute or less of an activity, to bring the family, the adult, and the child back in the present moment. And you can do that by taking breaths. You can, another example would be, let's say, blowing some bubbles. And instead of just having the kids run around and pop all the bubbles that you blow, maybe you blow all the bubbles and everybody listens to the sound it makes when it pops. Or maybe they watch the bubbles and try to find which one they think is the biggest or which one they think is the smallest. So it's bringing them in the present moment through play.
Okay.
And if you get more in the present moment, it can have many different benefits. It's the main one being just being more present and uh, enjoying life more, having a different relationship in life if you're more in the moment.
Okay. Let's go back to a second. Talk about for a second and talk about sign language, right? So, two questions really that comes to mind for me. One is, at what age is the proper age with an infant to start teaching sign language? And the second is, do you see any cognitive um, do you, from a cognitive perspective, do you see any specific advantages to later communication with that child? Or, I mean, what do you see as you work with clients and even your own children, right? I mean, you start off doing sign with them, and so they're learning sign and communicating with sign. What kind of an impact that have on their future communication?
Okay. The recommended age to begin start signing with a baby has always been around 6 to 9 months old.
Okay,
And when I started signing with my daughter in 1998, she was close to a year old. But with my second child and my third child, I decided to start signing with them when they were 2 months old. I believe I'm alone in my views on this, in that since 2001, I've been a proponent of signing with babies from 2 months and older. I'm only suggesting 2 months because of the visual acuity. You want them to be able to see what you're doing when you're gesturing.
right.
Um, but my children were signing to me actively at about 6 months old. And when I was signing to them way back when, the experts were saying, why don't you start signing it between 6 and 9 months? And my kids were signing back to me earlier than they had even suggested to start signing with a baby. Uh, so there's a lot of reasons for wanting to start early or not wanting to start. That's like a whole topic in itself. But uh, I think that any age is great to start signing with a baby to reduce frustration. So some people start with me when their baby's a year old or even 2 years old with no spoken language. So any age is fine, but I think that starting when they're real young is even better. So 2 months old is my recommendation.
Okay.
And as far as how does it affect them cognitively, uh, many of the classes that I teach because I get funding from different agencies, government agencies, and I teach in more than 100 different public libraries in New England. And the reason they can get funding for all of this is because the studies have shown that if you sign with the baby to reduce frustration and bond and connect, it is really great for the future for their early literacy skills, reading, writing, spelling, and all of
Interesting.
that. So
That's what I was
even though
wondering about, actually.
yeah, so it's not the reason we do it. It's not this better baby gimmick and, sign with your baby and they'll be really smart. But it actually, you're doing it to reduce frustration, but it actually is really great for their brain. And there have been some studies done. There was one done by Dr. Kimberly Whaley at the Ohio State University Child Development Lab, and she had a uh, childcare environment, and she tracked how many spoken words these babies had that were signed to. And she showed that when these babies were 2 years old, they had 50 more spoken words than the national average. When they were 3 years old, they were speaking one whole year advances if they were 4 years old than the national average. And in my own family, and all the families I've been working with for over 20 years, that's the same theme that they circle back to me and say, my child is so verbal. We had a great, easy time for them learning to read, and that their early literacy skills were great.
Interesting. No, it's so it's very fascinating because you know, let me, if I may, let me just ask a few more questions along these lines. So when you're talking about one of the things that keeps popping up in my head that I'm hearing everything you're saying, but this kind of always grabs my attention is when you talk about frustration. So, with a baby, I mean, certainly there's frustrations, right? If a baby could communicate right after birth, they'd be saying, "Hey, can someone change my diaper? I have a poopy diaper, I have a wet diaper, or I'm hungry. When are we going to eat?" Stuff like this. So, just the most basic things you can think of that are at least as a person that's father that's raised two kids, when a child's hungry, they're crying and stuff. But certainly it'd be a lot less frustrating for them if they could say, could I have something to eat, or is it food snack time or something? Do you I mean where do you level set, right? I mean, where do you come off in, when you're working with a new client, or how do you come out with a new client and say, here's what we're going to do first? I mean, is there something you start off with every child, or is it on case by case basis, or how does that work?
It's case by case basis, but the first sign we always start off with is milk because it's so important for a baby to be able to say that they want to have milk. So start off with milk and usually more and eat and change diaper. And once the baby starts to learn and understand those signs, then I recommend that they start adding maybe one new sign per week.
Wow, that is amazing. Yeah, because that's what I was thinking. I mean, when you said frustration, any parent that's listening knows immediately. It's like, well, sure, they're hungry, they want their diaper changed, they want more, whatever it happens to be. Maybe there's a toy they want, it's out of reach and they can't get to it. I mean, yeah,
Exactly.
that's fascinating.
I remember one time I was going on a long car ride. I had my 2-year-old in the car and my son, who was 6 months old at the time. And I was breastfeeding, so the bowel movements weren't that smelly. And I had just changed his diaper. And it was just me and my two kids in the car. And I got ready for this long car ride. And then my 2-year-old was telling me that my son was, moving his hands around because she knew that there was something going on, but she didn't really know what. And so I peeked around and he was signing, change my diaper. And I thought, well, I just changed his diaper. Maybe he's just thinking about it. But I thought I better check. So I scooped him up and I checked, and sure enough, he had another bowel movement. So I was able to change him. And then we went for a car ride and we were happy and everything was fine. But if I didn't know sign language and he didn't know it, he would have been miserable sitting in something. I would have thought, well, I don't smell it and I just changed his diapers and I have to get to where I'm going. So I would have probably let him cry a bit and it would have had a totally different outcome. So there really are I have so many stories of how it does and has reduced frustration for me and all the other families that I've worked with. One time I was teaching a in-person class with a group in Grafton, and there was a mom with a baby who was about 9 months old, and I was signing and singing and engaging the children and the babies. And this particular baby crawled over to her mom, signed milk, sat up on her lap, had some milk for, a couple of minutes. When she was done, she crawled back over to the group and played with us. And,
Wow,
there was no crying, there was no stress, there was nothing. She just said,
that's
"Hey, I'm
amazing.
thirsty. Can I have a drink?" I'll give you one other story. There was a woman who told me that she was putting her baby down for a nap. The baby was about 9 months old. So she put the baby down for the nap. It was summertime, so it was a little bit hot. But as she was putting the baby down, baby was signing with both hands milk. Usually they just do it with one, but she was doing it with two, probably because she really wanted milk. And so the mom scooped her up, gave her some milk, put her back down for a nap. She slept for, an hour or two or whatever, and everything was fine. But the mom was telling me if they didn't know sign language, what would the experience have been? The baby would have been crying, the mother would have thought, well, let the baby cry for a few minutes. She has to take a nap. And the baby may have been, had a dry throat, or it was hot, or just wanted a little snuggle, whatever the reason. And it would have been a totally different
Yeah.
outcome. So parents tell me it doesn't make your baby happier, but there's like a overall kind of peacefulness around a family that has early communication, because the baby just knows that they'll be heard and they'll have a voice. But I wouldn't say it makes them happier; it just makes them almost feel a little bit more at ease knowing that they have a voice.
Sure, sure. Hey, so let me ask you a question about sign, right? So when you're, and I think it's pretty well documented that when you, at least when you talk about foreign languages, that children can pick up a foreign language much more easily than adults, right? Because at a certain age, it's harder for adults to learn a foreign language. Do you find that when you go to parents' homes or you're working with clients, that it's easier to teach a baby or a toddler sign than it is to teach the parents who need to interpret it?
Interesting. I would say for overall spoken foreign languages that you're right that it's easier for them to learn it when they're babies than adults. But with sign language, because I'm teaching the babies and the adults, I feel like it's pretty similar as far as the level. But remember, I'm only teaching kind of words, so I'm not teaching a whole. If I were uh, teaching them to be fluent in ASL, I bet you would be right. But this is just, I'm saying the word ball, I'm showing the baby a ball, and I'm signing ball. So it's very simple.
Okay, that's interesting too. I'm glad that you explained it that way because it hadn't even occurred to me. But you're absolutely right. I mean, you're not really teaching a complex method of communication. You're teaching what they need to accomplish all these amazing things that the babies are accomplishing to avoid frustration and you know as you were saying, according to past studies, improving language as they get older and everything. So it's fascinating. Let me switch gears here for 1 second, Cheryl, and ask you about slightly older kids. So now, and I don't know if you do this or not, so I'm just going to ask: do you work with children that are special needs, maybe that are autistic or have some sort of you know um, deficit that requires help on their part to communicate better? Is that something that you do as well?
Well, what ends up happening with me typically is that I will be working with a family, or uh, in a group, someone will have taken my class, and then they might circle back to me and say, hey, you know what, we found out that our child is actually hearing impaired, and so it's great that we know signs. Or hey, you know what, my baby has Asperger's or autism or something, and the sign language is now great. And I do have uh, um, Down syndrome organizations that I work with, and I will do a group class for families with children with Down syndrome, and that's pretty amazing to see the results with that. But I do find it really rewarding when uh, I can help other families that do have some kind of need. And uh, for me, I kind of feel like I might have a little bit of an uncanny sense of when there might be some kind of delay. I might see it very early, but I don't share it because I don't feel like it's my place. But usually they're not being diagnosed with autism or until 18 months, 2 years old. And I remember I'm working with them when they're 4 months old, 6 months old, and I am able to sometimes kind of see something, but I actually just know that since they're learning sign language, that it's going to have the best outcome, whether I'm right or I'm wrong in my hunch.
Sure, sure. Um, it's interesting because my we have my wife and I have a son who's autistic. He's 16 now, but I remember having discussions amongst our family members about possibly teaching him sign when he was very young. And it's funny listening to all the things you say. I look back, and of course, going backwards doesn't help. In the respect that there's nothing you can do about it now. But I think about that now, and especially given what you said, and you know, at least a little part of me regrets not trying to go down that road. But the issue is when you're there's just a lot of challenges, and that's only one piece of it, right? Sometimes with a child with
Exactly.
autism, but
Exactly.
hearing you say what you said makes me think about because and that's why I really focused in on the word frustration, because I can remember when my son was younger, he would point at things and say, he would point at the cabinet and say brown, and you could tell it was just so frustrating for him because he knew what he wanted a snack, but we didn't know what he wanted, so we had to literally go through everything in the cabinet until we found what he wanted. And that thankfully didn't go on for a super long time. But early on, I'm sure there was a lot of frustration, and there probably still some frustration on his part with some level of communication. But he's actually really good now. But anyways,
That's great. So I'm glad you brought that up because I usually don't talk about this, but one of the uh, main reasons that I love doing what I'm doing with the infant massage and the sign language is that I know that when you have a baby and you start them off with touch and the circulation and the um, sign language really stimulating their brain at 2 months old in that way, and a lot of eye contact and all of that, I know that it can give a baby the best possible outcome, the best possible path. And so one of the things that motivates me to do what I do every single day is that I know, without preaching this or talking about this, I've never even brought this up in an interview before, I don't think, is that I know that it's not I'm not going to say it prevents anything, and there's nothing wrong with autism anyway, but it just gives the best outcome possible, I think, by having this early bonding and communication.
yeah, yeah. I mean, we've done a lot of early intervention. Not to go off on a long story about my son, but we've done a lot of early intervention with him when he was younger, and there's certainly it differs, of course, from child to child, and the spectrum, the autism spectrum is wide. But in his case, there were things that definitely helped him. So, it's just interesting to me, because that's why I asked you specifically if you worked with older kids that maybe had disabilities, because it seems like it would be super helpful for the exact same reasons it's helpful for an infant. Um, but yeah, so that's fascinating. So do you? I know you talk about massage and sign and mindfulness. What and you started massage way back in the beginning, 1999. You said, is there? Do you still do? As far as your services, do you still do all that, or have you kind of moved a little bit away from massage and it's mostly sign, or is it still pretty much a full service, including all?
Well, the massage, I just want to make a clarification that I don't ever touch the baby. I teach the parent or the caregiver how to massage the baby because they have the relationship, so they're communicating through touch, not me.
Oh, good
Uh,
point.
and yes, so I continue to teach classes for all three, but I would say what I'm most well known for is the sign language, and that is most of my clients are sign language, but I do still have clients for mindfulness and for massage.
Okay. Okay. Great. Well, let me switch gears here for a second, if you don't mind, Cheryl. I'm going to ask you a couple of questions that are more specific about the business end of things, and see if we can um, find a way to help you grow your business a little bit while we're chatting. Um, are you? Let me think now. So where, I guess I didn't ask you this before, but do you have like a geographic, I'm assuming since you go and talk to parents, you must have kind of a geographic limitation to where you'll go and what you'll do. Are you in this state in Massachusetts?
I'm in Massachusetts and I travel around the state of Massachusetts. I will go into other states, and I have done that within New England. And just in the last 2 years, I've started doing a lot of what I do on Zoom. So I'm able to do classes and consultations and private sessions um, on Zoom instead of, yeah. So I've worked with people in Mexico and Australia and, all over the world now because of
Interesting.
Zoom. Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny because I don't think there's a single business that I've interviewed that hasn't, that the pandemic hasn't had some sort of an impact on, and a lot of times it's not necessarily, people automatically assume it's a bad impact, but it's not necessarily a bad impact. I mean, a lot of people, like you just said, you've kind of spread, the borders of your business to around the world now. Do you think that you'll continue to do that, or do you think you'll go back to doing something more locally within New England?
I think I'll continue to go, you know, globally. Um, and yeah, I'm fine to do that.
Okay. Yeah, you sound like a. That's funny the way you laugh a little bit. It's like it's kind of funny to think of yourself as almost like a Fortune 500. It's like, yes, I have a global presence, but no,
Well,
I mean it is cool.
yeah, I mean, when everything first happened with the pandemic, all of my classes got canceled because everything I did was live in person. And
Right.
for a month, I didn't work, and I thought, what the heck am I going to do? And then everything just went to the Zoom, and I got a Zoom account. And then I thought, a lot of times I sign directly to the babies. A lot of what I do is modeling for the parents and caregivers, and I'm showing what it looks like, and I'm engaging the babies. And people call me, baby guru. So I have a instant rapport with babies, just like someone who's a dog person, like instant rapport with dogs, or somebody who
Sure.
works with the elderly. So I have a special something with babies. And I thought, how am I ever going to do this on the screen? And the babies, they love Zoom. I'm Zooming with babies every day. It's the funniest thing. And they are engaged and interested, and they act as if I'm right in front of their face.
That's actually a little surprising to me. I thought that it would be hard to keep the attention of a baby on Zoom, but wow, that's good. Well, it's great news for you, right?
Yep.
That's awesome. Do me a favor. Walk me through. I know you said you spent about a month there. Your business was shut down. You were kind of like, oh goodness, a little bit of panic here. What am I going to do? So you transitioned to Zoom, but walk me through how the process you did to find clients, because you had people from Australia. I think you said Australia and other parts of the world. So what's your process to find clients? What did you do to get people interested enough to actually get on a Zoom and talk with you?
I think I have sort of a unique situation because a lot of my services are covered by grant money. So a lot of my clients are librarians and libraries and early childhood organizations and parenting organizations, parenting programs. And what I ended up doing was reaching out to my clients at the libraries because they would host a class and then get funding for it. And the parents would come free to the class. But I contact them and I said, oh, I know I'm supposed to do an in person class in 2 months, and we're not doing in person classes, and we don't know what we're doing. What do you think about me doing the program on Zoom? And I sent them all the places that I was trying to get them to agree to have me do it on Zoom,
Okay.
all the librarians, I sent them a video of families and babies watching me on Zoom so they could actually see
Hmm.
how engaged the babies were. And, uh, and they all wanted to do it. And then all of a sudden it just spread. And I replaced every in person class with a Zoom. And now I'm booked for Zoom all the way until like now. If someone were to call me, I would be booking into probably February.
Wow. That's a good problem to have, Cheryl.
Yeah. And then, but with private clients, what ends up happening typically is someone comes to my free library class, either in person or Zoom, and
Hmm.
then they find a connection with me. And then they think, wow, I really want the gift of early communication. And I think this is the person to do it. And then I get private clients from that usually, or word of mouth. But sometimes I'll get a private client when the baby's, maybe 6 months old, and I help them with language that sometimes they don't want to have the sessions end, because even if the child's starting to speak, there's still so much that I can teach the baby with language. So, like right now, I have one of my clients, their baby is just turning 20 months, and I've been with them since the baby was 2 months old.
Wow.
And every time when we're done with the session, I'm like, okay, so yeah, have you had enough? Do you want more? But every time they want me, more sessions. So sometimes it's kind of, I'll have someone for maybe a couple of years as a client.
Sure. Wow. That's unbelievable. So so it sounds like you've mostly been able to reach out to librarians and kind of, you know, network outward from there, as it were. What kinds of other people have you been connecting with other than librarians? Like, where's the librarian network taken you? Have you figured out new avenues based on that, or did you just kind of do things independently that were different, totally different avenues that have also been effective for you?
Well, before I was going and teaching at libraries, I was trying to find clients and teach at um, maybe different parenting organizations. And I found it a little frustrating because I would have to put all of this work into it, maybe not even to fill the class. But if I filled the class, it would definitely be more lucrative than teaching at a library, right?
Right,
Because but when I started teaching at the libraries, I thought, okay, this is pretty amazing because I just have to actually just show up. I don't have to do anything. I don't have to worry about if there's enough people to have the class, because they have plenty of people and the class is free. But the only downside, and maybe I would get clients from it. The only downside was it was not as lucrative, right? Because I can't charge as much.
right. I mean, you're getting, so the grant money comes from the libraries through the municipality, or how does that work?
They have a friends network where they're just people in the community that are donating money. And
Hmm.
then some of the money is from local organizations, and some is just, yeah, funding that they get from the state for the libraries get, and they get to decide what are they going to spend their money on, what program.
Right. Well, since you mentioned videos earlier, let me talk a little bit about your web and social media presence. Do you have a? I know you have a website, and I was looking at it earlier. Looks good. Looks like there's a fair amount of information on here. I like that you have your own story on here. I think that that's important for people to see that, because from a marketing perspective, people make a personal connection or a meaningful connection to a business or a nonprofit, it helps that business ultimately. So I like that, and um, I had looked a little bit at your gallery, and of course, babies. Who doesn't like pictures of smiling babies, right? Parents and babies all smiling. It's all good. So that's wonderful, and I do see that it looks like you've got a few things on YouTube. Would you say you have a pretty good presence on YouTube as far as videos and things that people go look at?
Not at all. I am not on YouTube really at all. And uh, yeah, not much
Okay,
at all.
okay, and let me see, because I know you have a Facebook page, you're on LinkedIn, you're on Pinterest. It looks like you're on Twitter, and you have YouTube, but really not much on there, I guess, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So one of the things I tell clients, Cheryl, a lot is that if you have a robust presence, and you practice, content delivery in a consistent way, that's how you bring in, you'll be able to bring in more people to a business. If you and you don't until you're more, I think. Um, Experienced or skilled in that, we always tell people, well, don't try and do everything at the same time. It'll just overwhelm you. So don't try and do like a podcast, a YouTube channel, Facebook events, all these things, right? So there's things that it can overwhelm you. So we say, start with the thing that you're most comfortable with and build that up, and then move on sometimes to your next thing. There's also this idea of repurposing information. I'm a big believer in that. So if I go off and do an interview, by the way, I could use what we're using today. I could use Zencaster, or I could use any number of different tools to, do a video interview with someone, split screen, where we talk. There's a plugin also where you can do a live split screen interview on Facebook or YouTube, with an app called B.live is the website. I've used that before with people, and one of the benefits of that is that sometimes people are live streams are sometimes a little more engaging than just static stuff that you post every once in a while, because people are likely to click on something if they see it, especially if they follow your page or they're following your YouTube channel. The more they'll first of all they'll get notified that there's a live going on, and they might go, oh, maybe I'll check that out, and they'll go click it. But when you do stuff like that, especially with something like B.live, or even Zencaster, you get a video that you can then later extract the audio from and use it in a podcast. So you're kind of, and I see, political shows and other types of, commentary shows do this all the time. They'll have a YouTube channel and they will post their stuff on their podcast, their audio podcast as well. And the reason you do that is because different people have different preferences. Some people don't. Some people like to drive in their car, and they have long commutes when they're driving. They like to listen to podcasts. I myself will listen to a YouTube show. I won't watch it, but it'll connect to the audio of my car. If I'm driving somewhere far, I'll listen to it. So it's just giving people to consume information. Everyone consumes it in different ways. So you're giving them, each of those audiences, an opportunity to consume that information in a way that works for them, that they like. I notice on your Facebook, I know you have a Facebook page. Um, Now I don't know if you use your Facebook page a lot, or I didn't really look at it very carefully. So would you say that you post to that fairly consistently, or?
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
I'm
So,
always posting like babies signing and babies signing in my classes, and I am active on there. I'm not doing a lot of videos of me talking like, "Hey guys, just want to tell you, try this tip, and this is what you can do with your baby." I don't really do much of that.
yeah. It could be helpful if you did, only because you can have, I mean, especially given what you do, you could have a weekly thing saying, "Hey, sign of the week," and you just do a
Yeah.
sign and you talk
Yes.
about it. I mean, I
Yes.
mean, literally, what you do is visual.
Right.
So video, I think, would be important. And I don't really think you're given it. It's up to your judgment, of course, but from a layman's point of view, and please correct me if I'm wrong, it doesn't seem like you'd be giving away any state secrets or anything if you did it. Like, oh, well, now they're not going to come to my class or anything, right? I mean, people see it and they say, "Oh, it's interesting." The other thing that I think would be really cool is if you get the permission of the parents, which it seems like you have in some cases because you're showing these videos, is to have a video of a session with a baby on, on YouTube or, um, you know, uh, being able to show people the experience they can expect. And plus it's like people love, babies just like people love dogs and cats. I mean, those videos are always viral, and so that's a way to get a lot of people interested in what you do. And the key to doing something like that is, whether it's, it's YouTube or however you do that, is you want to have a distinct call to action in the description of, and I'll use YouTube as an example. You have a video, you have a little description of what's going on underneath the video, and then you have a link to something saying, if you're interested in what you see and you'd like to join my next class, please register here. And people click on it and they register on your Calendly calendar or whatever, however you do that. Or if you do it through Facebook and you do use Facebook events, you do it that way as well. But that's kind of a way to get people to not only see the kind of content you're doing, but then giving them a way to act on it. Because um, what's the old saying my friend used to say to me when I was very young? He'd say, "You're never going to get a hit if you don't swing the bat," right? And so
Hmm.
if you don't give people an opportunity to hit your call to action, to hit that link to register or even get more information, I am a big believer in that a call to action should go to something, not just a website, because that's not really something they can act on without too much work. And your conversion rates, the people that actually give you their email or register for something, drop precipitously if it takes more than one or two steps to do it. So that's one thing I would recommend, is maybe do that. The other thing is, quick question I had was, I know you have a Facebook page, but do you participate in other Facebook groups on Facebook that aren't your groups, but maybe are other people's groups that deal with, babies or anything that might have to do with sign or communication, anything like that?
No.
Okay. That might not be a bad avenue either, Cheryl, because um, I mean, I've done that before, and clients I had have done that before, where you just go out and you find Facebook groups that are related, either directly or tangentially, to what you do, and all you do is provide value. You don't go out there and sell and give them links to click on or anything like that. You basically go out and look for people asking questions about signing for children, signing for, babies, or communication type issues that might be related to what you're doing. And you try and answer some of those questions. And when you do that, um, a lot of times I'll do that with people and I'll give them, at least from my perspective, it makes sense, but I give them everything they need to know. But the thing is, what happens is most people will appreciate it, but they're not going to act on it because A, they're not experts in it, and B, sometimes they would just prefer to have someone else do it. So that ends up being business for me. I get leads, I get people that, join my mailing list, and I always ask permission where there isn't an obvious way for them to opt into my email list. If I'm talking to someone and they send me an email asking me questions, I'll email them back saying, "Hey, is it okay if I add you to my email list too?" And if they say yes, you've got them saying yes in email, and you add it, and you've added to your mailing list, which actually is. Um, uh, Before we wrap up, that was one of the other questions I want to ask you. Would you say you have a fairly, well? Let me just ask you this: how large is your email list?
I have an email list of about 300, but what happens is their babies grow up fast and then they don't want to be on the list anymore. I have this list is such a short term list because
Right.
they're usually only my clients for a year or two. And so I'm not really great about my email list. And because I'm booked out until February, I'm not like really making it a big priority to do something with emails in the list.
Right. All I can say, from a marketing perspective, email is usually, everything you do when you do pay-per-click advertising, or you're trying to get people to come to seminars, or they do show up, you're doing the same thing. You're collecting emails, or you should be collecting emails from people that come up either through a physical sign-in sheet, or if they register online and then show up, which, by the way, is probably preferable. Um, And even with people that, and I understand your quandary. I mean, babies grow up fast, right? But even so, these people that have babies have friends that have
Right.
babies. They have
Right.
more members of their family that they add
Yes.
with time going on. And
Yes.
there's an old, um, you know, uh, thought about email lists too. Is that well, when should I prune? When should I do this? And I'd say never. If someone doesn't unsubscribe from your email list, continue to send them stuff. Sometimes people have such a good experience, and it sounds like that's totally the case with you, Cheryl, that people have such a good experience that they want to stay on, that they're interested. Maybe they're not using it for their baby anymore, but now they get to a point where they have friends that have kids, and they're going to recommend you.
Yeah.
Um, and there are strategies around mailing lists too. Every email is not directly meant for a client. Sometimes it's meant for as a way to reward existing clients that refer you.
Mm-hmm.
So hey, I just want to take some time today to thank everyone who does this. And I know this. I don't know if this is possible because you do some stuff through grants, but you do some for-profit stuff as well, right?
Yes.
So you can
Yeah.
send stuff out and say, look, for people that I have a new um, class coming up. It's scheduled for the week before Thanksgiving, and on this date and time. And would love to have any of my valuable clients attend. Or if there's someone that you think this class could be helpful to, we do offer a referral incentive for anyone that and so on, right? So
Yeah.
you're trying to incentivize people to spread the word, right?
Yes.
And and given what you said earlier, you have you have great because of the nature of all this. There's a lot of what you do. There's a lot of people you could reach out to, because I'm just thinking of who might be potential, uh, you know, loosely speaking, partners that would benefit you, right? So obviously, librarians rather, parenting organizations a little bit. I know you spoke about that. But then you have, daycare centers. You have, other types. I mean, there are all sorts of organizations that deal with children, and some of them are nonprofit. So, if you're talking about going through the perspective of the grant, realm, you can work with nonprofits and say, that perhaps work with the same state or local municipalities to say, look, why don't we work together and provide a seminar that deals with what I do, with what you do, with what X, Y, and Z does. So I do that in the business world a lot with clients. So I'll do a first time home buyer seminar, and we do it as like an online thing these days, right? But a first time home buyer means that I'm talking to a real estate lawyer. I'm talking to a realtor. I'm talking to home, auto, and casualty insurance person. I'm talking to general contractors. I'm talking to 203K loan people. You see what I mean? So
Yeah.
you can find opportunities to partner up with other organizations that, for instance, you may see something that, someone has an event coming up, and you may say, hey, I know you've got this event coming up now, but in the future, I would love to, maybe do an event with you on this, because I think there's synergy between what you do and I do, type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Just a few ideas there. And I say the same thing about whether it's social media, whether it's a blog on your website, whether it's email, posting a video. Those things should be done on a regular basis. So if you have an email list, because I've had this happen with clients before, they have an email list of like 1,000 people, and they spend a lot of money building that list up, but then they're not good about emailing them. And so 6 months goes by, and then they decide to blast out an email to all 1,000 people about their latest thing. And people scratch their head and look at it and say, who's this person? Because they don't even remember signing up for it, because
Mm-hmm.
they haven't done consistent, at least weekly emails. So you get a lot of unsubscribes, you get some spam complaints, versus if you're good about it, then you keep the engagement going with your list. You probably get more referrals, and people know who you are going forward. Um, so before we wrap up, I just want to give you an opportunity to ask me anything you might have, any questions you might have about, um, business development or growth or anything digital or online about businesses. Is there anything that I can answer more questions for you on?
Well, you talked about a call to action. I know on my website I don't necessarily have a call to action. Would you recommend that I maybe just add a button where they can sign up for a class or something? Is that
So, call to action, good question. I think it makes sense to have a call to action. I would say that when we're looking at your website, and of course, no specific judgments here. This is just what I see from a marketing perspective. But there's this concept of having, and it's old newspaper language, above the fold and below the fold. So if you're going to have a contact form on your website, you want it to be like right now. I'm on a 27-inch monitor, and I can't even see your contact form. I have to scroll to see it. And if you're on an iPhone, you won't. You'd have to scroll too. So I would say that if you're going to do something like that, you want it to be above the fold, so to speak. Um, but honestly, if I'm doing a typical model for me, Cheryl, would be if I were to do a Facebook or Google pay-per-click ad. I would usually do something around with an idea focusing on an ebook. So, for instance, you might have a Google or Facebook ad that says, "Hey, learn. Do you want to learn? Here's the top 7 ways that benefits of teaching your baby sign." Right? And people might look at that and say, "Oh, that's kind of interesting." Or how to improve your baby's cognitive communication through sign, right? And people might look at that and say, "Oh, that's interesting to me." Is it interesting enough for them to give you their email? Probably, right? So you want something that's going to be that hits number one, hits the audience you want. So someone that's a single guy in his 20s is going to see that and he's not going to care. But a parent who's someone that's got a baby, a newborn, or within the first few months might say, "Hey, you know what? I'm interested in learning more." So on an ad like that, they would click and go to a landing page. And on the landing page, not the website, just a straight up landing page. It's sort of a separate, I don't need to go into the technical pieces of it, but it's like a subdomain of your website, right? But there's no navigation bar, there's nothing. It's just the landing page. And it looks similar to the ad, which is important because you don't want someone to come from an ad to a landing page that looks completely different from the ad, because then they're like, "What's this?" And it drops off your conversion rate. So they come in and it's simple. It says, "Hey, enter your email here and click submit, and we'll send you the ebook." So what did you do? You just added someone to your mailing list. And why is that important? It's important because you know for a fact, out of the millions of people that are seeing these things every day on Facebook, this particular person is interested in sign for baby, which is exactly what you do. And if I were doing it, I would do massage for baby too, massage techniques. You could do 2 or 3 ads, all pointing, and that way you're actually segmenting your mail list. So you have people that are interested in massage, go to a massage mail list. For sign, go to a sign mail list, and for mindfulness for parents goes to a separate list, right? I think low hanging fruit for you would be the communication improvement through sign, as well as maybe baby massage. And then what happens is they get a thank you when they click submit. They say, "Okay, we're going to email your form now. If you'd like to attend our any of our seminars, please register for our next seminar here. Or if you'd like to contact me, set up a 30-minute free consultation, click the link here to sign up and do that." Which could be like a link like I did for you for this interview to Calendly, right? .com. Or they could also, you could come in and it could be a link to Calendly, and you could say, "Look, if you want to jump to the head of the line, then skip the registration and call me directly at this number," and you give them your cell phone. And I do that a lot with people. It tends to be fairly effective because there's certain people that are, they're the people that are much more, I want to call them impulse buyers. That's probably not the right term for what we're describing here, but it's kind of the same thing. They're impulsive. They want to do something immediately. So people that see that phone will call you. And then there are people that are a little more measured. They're going to look and think about it. And so they may see the thing and they may not even register on Calendly. But because they're on your mailing list, now they go into a email campaign and they get 7 emails from you once a day for 7 days. And the reason for that is that people won't act on a brand that they're not familiar with until they've seen it 3 to 7 times. That's on average. So you have emails that go out that talk about, the first one might be this is what a
Mm-hmm.
seminar might look like if you join me. And it's a little screenshot of a YouTube video of a baby. And when they click it, it goes to that YouTube video that you have posted that shows a session with a baby. And then the next email might talk about some studies with cognitive improvements for babies and a little bit about your own personal story and so on, right? I don't want to go through a whole copywriting thing here, but basically, that's how, I would try to get targeted leads for what you do in your business. And of course, it helps knowing the demographics, right? So you generally speaking on Facebook and Google, you can say, okay, I want everyone from 25 to, maybe 35, let's say plus. And that way, you or whatever your demographic might be, probably all, I'm assuming, female, right? So that greatly cuts the cost of what you'd be spending on your advertising because you've cut it down from anyone in the world to women between 25 and 35. And you learn that kind of stuff as time goes on, just based on the analytics you see in the back end in Facebook or Google and who comes in or doesn't come in. So, anyways, that was kind of a long-winded answer, but was that helpful?
Yeah, it's definitely helpful. And something else I've been kicking around as far as idea is writing a sign language book and publishing it,
Nice.
and getting all my secrets out and my tips and techniques into the form of a book. Because ultimately, I'd love to be on panels and, um, kind of get the word out besides just teaching the classes.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of avenues today that weren't available years ago where you can self-publish and get a book out there pretty quickly. You can do it through things like, oh boy, now I'm going to forget the names. It's been a while since I looked at this. I work with a nonprofit where the executive director published a book, an economics book, and we went through quite a bit with that book. And but there's a lot of like you could even go through Amazon through their Kindle publishing. There's other places you can go through too that you could have it in stores and all that kind of stuff. But if you get it published, that does give you, you know, a little more of a boost for the brand, right? Because you end up on panels. You say the published author of so and so, please help me welcome, Sheryl White, for instance, right? So yeah, I mean, publishing something I think is a great idea, and it's funny because there's a marketing person. His name's Russell Brunson. I listen to him quite a bit, and I think he's brilliant in the marketing circles. But one of the things he does, he's written a lot of books, and so one of the things he does is, or he talks about, anyways, is that for people that don't know what to write or how to write it or when they're going to do it, or maybe that really want an engaging book, no matter what the subject matter is. He says, the thing to do is to set up interviews with people and talk to them. And, and what you're doing is you're talking to people that are, directly related to your niche and what you're doing, right? So what he did was he did this with a number of people, and because he's an internet marketer, in inbound marketing, he dealt with things like, how do you get traffic to your landing pages? How do you write a good landing page? How do you, create these great videos? And what he did was he talked to people who were experts in those fields, even though he himself is an expert in those fields. And the reason is that he then turned around and took that material and wrote a book pretty much based on those conversations by, almost, not quite, but almost, transcribing those lengthy conversations between the two, and then writing a book based on those conversations and using the references liberally to the people he's worked with. And it works really well. Now, I'm not sure that's a direction you're going in, but I just mentioned it because, um, he is an expert in that field and the things he talks about, and he still does that and finds it really helpful. So I'm sure there's people that, from a perspective of clients for you, that, you might be talking to people like, well, certainly, obviously parents, but then people that you work with too, like librarians, you know, different members of community organizations, different people that have nonprofits that work with kids, maybe some nonprofits that work with children with disabilities. I mean, there's a lot of opportunity there for you to kind of stretch the comfort zone you have for your own knowledge and add to that knowledge by talking to people that help fill in the gaps for other things that maybe you want to talk about as well.
Interesting.
Um, so self-publishing, or do you have an agent? Have you published a book before?
Uh, no, I am writing the book, and then hopefully I will find a publisher. I had someone reach out to me about 6 years ago and asked me to, wanted to be my publisher or whatever, and book agent, and I didn't like the contract, so I let it go, but I don't think it was right for me.
There's a lot of good local publishing houses in Boston, no doubt.
Okay.
But listen, before we wrap up, I do want to give you an opportunity to, for the folks that are listening, what's the best way to contact you, and and talk a little bit more about your next scheduled event and how people register for that if they want to.
Okay. Facebook is a great way to find me. Facebook.com/Baby Kneads, KNEADS, or my website, or my email, Sheryl, SHERYL, at babykneads.com. And I have some events coming up in the fall for under massage, sign language, and mindfulness, and they are all free to come to those. But to work with me one on one, it would be, we could talk about that.
That's excellent. Well, listen, I want to thank you so much. I'm going to ask you to stand by in the green room when we sign off here, but I just want to thank you very much for the opportunity to interview you. I really enjoyed it. It was fascinating. I think what you're doing is terrific, and I really wish you the best, and hope that I can. If I think of people, I'm hoping I can refer people your way, because I think it certainly sounds like a very worthwhile and enjoyable experience.
Thank you so much, Paul. I really appreciate your time and giving me, a chance to share what I do, and then also give me some help with the marketing.
Absolutely. Anytime. Thank you, Sheryl.
Thank you.
This has been Express Leads, hosted by Paul Brady of Brady Consulting and Inbound Marketing. If you have questions or comments, please feel free to leave us a voice message by visiting anchor.fm/expressleads. Thank you.